Hey strangers, so right now I'm having a lot of fun playing this Magic the Gathering format called Historic. Historic is kind of unique amongst formats as it's only playable within the Magic the Gathering Arena client, alright? And this means that it's a lot more easier to adjust as there ain't any paper to deal with. At first, Historic was kind of a afterthought by the developers of the game, something to do with your cards once they rotate out of Standard, and for a while we thought that Historic would just be Standard Plus and be relatively similar to that format. But then the developers decided to inject some cards directly into the Historic format through these things called historic anthologies. And these cards that they added could be from essentially any period of the game. 2001, 2013, didn't matter. The first two of the historic anthologies added 45 cards into the game between them. And in that, you had cards that became the cornerstone of new strategies and cards that help bulk up fringe archetypes to make them more viable. Mixed in with the threats, you had a number of answer cards to keep the threats in line. Notably, in Historic Anthology 2, you had a lot of land destruction cards, and that made it safe for them to unrestrict Field of the Dead in that format. And I know I might have an opinion some other people don't have right now, but Field of the Dead has, I think, become a healthy part of the metagame because of those smart changes they made to the format. I'm not playing them though. I've had my fun with Field of the Dead. These days, I'm usually playing some like Grixis midrange or the pipe dream of, trying to make Mardu playable. So, maximum hype for me when Historic Anthology 3 was announced. 27 new cards this time, 2 of which were spoiled before the Ever 25. The first of which was Phyrexian Obliterator, and the other being Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger. And I think that these two cards kind of represent opposite sides of the good-bad spectrum. Specifically, I'm not thrilled to see Ulamog, at all. I was hyped when it happened. I mean, everyone was hype. He's a cool and big important character. He's in the lore. He's big and he's powerful and he's big. But the more I think about it, the more I come to the conclusion that his presence isn't really healthy for Historic. Before I make my point, let me argue why Phyrexian Obliterator is actually a good inclusion for the format. The Obliterator is an exceptionally powerful card. Just like Ulamog, it has a very unique and powerful effect. Whenever your opponent deals damage to her, said opponent must sacrifice that amount of permanence, and this includes lands. This effect can end games, but the card isn't unanswerable. It doesn't have hexproof or haste, it doesn't have an enter the battlefield ability, and it can be removed safely in a whole host of ways. More importantly, look at this card's mana cost. This thing cannot get more specific. 5 black. You normally cannot play this card outside of a mono black deck, and that's important. Remember, context is key with all cards because cards have to go in decks. Mono black actually was a deck early on in Historic's life. I actually had some fun with it. But, as Historic ground on and the metagame settled out, it turned out that Mono Black just didn't really have the power to compete with the big boys. Phyrexian Obliterator is a perfect top end for such a deck, and by adding this one card, you could make Mono Black midrange a viable deck in Historic. And so, by adding one card to the format, you've added an entire deck to the format, and thus made said format more diverse, more fun. When a person queues up to play Historic, it means there's a wider variance of things they could run into. And that's key because diversity is really the joy of Historic right now. There are some clearly defined archetypes, there's some stuff that shows up more than others, but whenever I queue in, I never really know what I'm going to be going up against. I got my teeth kicked in by this really nasty Dimir Flash deck the other day. And what worries me about Ulamog is that I see him as a threat to that diversity. Let's read Ulamog the Senseless Hunger. 10 generic mana, 10/10, indestructible. On cast, he exiles 2 of your opponent's permanents, and on attack, he exiles 20 cards from your opponent's deck. Now, in some ways, Ulamog has the opposite mana position of Phyrexian Obliterator, right? 10 generic mana means that he can be played by any color of mana, and that means, hypothetically, that he could go in any deck, but that's not going to be the case. Most games will not see you, maybe even coming close to generating 10 mana in one turn. No. You're not running Ulamog in a deck unless you have a plan to get him out, and get him out early. Maybe you're a ramp strategy, trying to generate mana fast, or you want to reanimate him from the graveyard, or use a different method to cheat him into play from the library. And you're gonna want to do that because as soon as he's in Historic, he kind of becomes the biggest thing in the format, and it's a really powerful good card that's seen a lot of play in Standard past, and you're gonna want to get him into play. I feel like Ulamog was put into Historic Anthology 3 to really gin up hype and excitement for the set. He's a card that people really know, and also it's exciting because he's kind of the biggest, dumbest, most epic creature in the format now. Yeah, big monster, yay! But wait, we already have big monsters in Historic. Zakama, Drakaseth, Inray's Forerunners, Agent of Treachery, even now Phyrexian Obliterator. If you're running a ramp, reanimator, or cheat into play strategy, why would you play anything else when you could play Ulamog? If he's just the most desirable creature in the format, then he forces those strategies to use him or be less optimal and less competitive. He'll force those other creatures out. And in this way, Ulamog would make the format less diverse. Now, I'm not a professional Magic the Gathering player. I'm not even that good at the game. I ain't been playing that long. I could be wrong. Maybe some of these cards are already better than Ulamog, or are better in certain situations. Maybe Ulamog won't really be played at all. Maybe he'll just be a flash in the pan. Won't make that big an impact. But my main fear is that his function as a card isn't so much to introduce something really new to Historic, but his function as a card is more to just raise Historic's power level, and in doing that, it's going to make the format less diverse. I think we've seen a lot right now, especially recently, in how more powerful formats does not a funner game make. Remember, the amount of cards does not determine the diversity of a format. It's the amount of decks viable to compete. At the end of the day, this is a competitive game. You're supposed to want to win. And if Ulamog raises the power level of Historic and forces the other big boys out, well, then we have a more boring format, not a more interesting one. Little cleanup. Yes, I know that Battle for Zendikar will eventually be on Arena because they've said they're going to try and bring all of Pioneer to Arena, but one, there's a big difference between, this May and 3 years from now. And two, they said they're going backwards, which means that we're going to get Emrakul, the promised end before Ulamog, and she would just fill the same role in an even better way. Historic Anthology 3 looks very underwhelming to me. I know they've got Jumpstart and Amonkhet Remaster coming in just a few months, so maybe that's fine, but, it really looks like mostly cube filler. Ancient Ziggurat is great. Very excited for that to make creature decks better and smooth out their mana. Burial Rites is definitely going to see some play. I honestly think that Obliterator and Ulamog were put in the set just to make people buy it. In short, more competitive strategies equals good. Printing objectively better cards that just make the old ones obsolete equals bad. This is my take. I'm sure it's uninformed and bad. To be clear, I don't know if I'm right. I'm not sure I'm right. Again, something totally different could happen. This is just a fear that I have. I'm just voicing my concerns that I have with the card. Again, I can't be wrong. In the comments, tell me what you think about these fears. I especially really want to hear from older, more experienced Magic players Tell me what you think about Ulamog, what effect he's going to have in Historic. What do you want to see in Historic? And for everybody else, what are you thinking about Historic Anthology 3? What cards do you like? What cards do you not like? What are you theory crafting about what you're going to want to do? Or what do you want to see in Historic? What are you enjoying in the format? What's your favorite deck in the format? Just tell me all that in the comments down below. We'll give it taka taka and we'll smick and smack. And everybody needs a little more contact and talking these days. That went off script. This is my Twitter. If you want my thoughts on things, subscribe and share this video if you would like me to have dopamine rushes in my brain. I hope you like this little thing. I like short videos, really woven in with the big ones, because there is a very big video coming soon. I actually took a break from making that video to film this one, because unlike that video, this video kind of has like a time slot in which it is like interesting and viable, because I gotta put it out before May 21st, May 21st, when the thing goes live. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this one. Be looking forward to that one. I am Wyatt the Warrior, and y'all be good.